falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling. Shouldn't be trusting me, I could be making it all up, you know. Out of control, you don't know me. I'm a danger to myself.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. And I'm back, and it's in my garage as usual, and it's a little chilly, so my nose is getting a little runny. So don't mind me sniffling here and there. I do have some sick children right now, so I want to get this video up and out. This is going to be probably about a 4 video series because I really deep dived into this case. This is the Kendrick Johnson case, as you're probably aware from the title and the thumbnail, and I really got into it deep and looked over everything, most recently watching the documentary. So if you're not familiar with the case, you can check out the documentary. I think it's about $4.99 to rent on Prime. You can also rent it on YouTube for the same amount of money. I rented it. You get it for 7 days, but I finished it all at once. It does have some very graphic images in it. But if you want to familiarize yourself with the family side of things, that is a great documentary to watch. I was really on the fence, and then I saw that documentary, and it swayed me kind of, in a different direction, from being on the fence to maybe more sure of something else going on. But at the same time, I have really dived into this case, and I'm going to present to you all of the evidence and the allegations and, just everything that I could find. So we're going to really get into this. This first video is going to be pretty much... we're going to go in order. So I'm going to give a little bit of background about the community, a little bit about the family, but we're really just going to start from that day, the day that his body was found. So welcome to anyone who is new here. I hope you like what you see. I'm just going to start off by saying I'm obviously a talker. I really like to communicate and engage with my viewers. I am not a wham bam thank you ma'am 10-minute vlogger, okay? This is a channel that I really deep dive into things. I spend a lot of hours going into research, and I like to talk about the case. So if that's not for you, then you're probably not going to enjoy this video, because I kind of talk my way through it. I do follow a script that I write for myself to keep me on point, but at the same time, I'm a talker. So for everyone else who already knows that and is cool with it and has subscribed to my channel, thank you guys so much. We are so close to 1,000. I am very, very excited because I would love to do lives, like I said. Monetization would be great too. However, true crime's not really getting monetized, but I'd be able to, get sponsorships and things like that. But I'm not going to bore you guys with those for a bit. I'm just getting used to, talking on here and, really having an audience. So definitely not going to bore you guys with sponsorships and all that right now. I just want you guys to get to know me, and hopefully it's a good fit. So thank you guys for all your wonderful comments. Thank you guys for all of your support, and without further ado, let's get into Kendrick Johnson's case. So I titled this Cover Up or Tragic Accident because that is exactly what we're trying to figure out here. This case has conspiracy written all over it. But isn't what it seems? There has been zero evidence found. In almost 10 years, 3 autopsies have been done, 2 exhumations to do those other 2 autopsies, and there's been 2 case reopenings. So this case has been opened up twice since it was originally closed. And at this moment, it is closed again. So it was just reopened this past, I believe March of last year. And then January of 2022, they closed it again. So that kind of sparked me to want to talk about it, because it's like, how do they keep closing this case? It obviously keeps being opened back up for a reason. So why does it keep getting closed? I want to see what's going on here. I've known about this case for a while. I wanted to cover it before. The photos are very graphic. It's very hard to even look his name up without seeing these graphic photos. And, they were making me sick to my stomach. But in all honesty, I want to get this case out there because I'm really trying to understand why charges haven't been filed and how they couldn't, make anything stick as far as this not being an accident. So this case gained the attention of the SCLC, the NAACP. It had all sorts of, the Washington bigwigs looking into it, none of which could find any sufficient evidence or any suspects that didn't have rock-solid alibis. Means, motive, and opportunity cannot be proven in this case, not beyond a reasonable doubt, not even enough probable cause to bring anyone in for a trial on this case. So it's very interesting. The family of Kendrick Johnson are convinced that their son was murdered, and they believe that the subjects were two of his classmates. They also believe that this was a civil rights injustice and conspiracy from the beginning, calling it premeditated murder by two white boys and their FBI father. This case, while it's certainly different in some ways, reminds me a lot of the Kenneka Jenkins case. If you don't know about the Kenneka Jenkins case, I'm from Chicago, so I remember when this first happened. It's a Chicago black girl goes missing at a hotel party, and eventually she's found dead in the hotel restaurant's freezer. The surveillance had all been cut up, it appeared. Lots of people lying, all sorts of conspiracy theories surrounding her case, as well as that racial theory of her, not being important because she was a black girl. And, white law enforcement, black victim, and it didn't seem that they cared. They put a lot of shit off and everything, but that's a whole nother case. And, I would love to do that one too, but man, that one would probably take me a month to get all the information because that's another big one. So let's talk about where we're at now and the person that I have chosen to talk about. So Kendrick Johnson, however, the exception, talking about Kenneka, Kendrick Johnson got much more than Kenneka did. Kendrick had the help of the entire Department of Justice, the GBI, the FBI, the NAACP, the SCLC, and many autopsies and pathologists looked into this case. KJ's mother, Jacqueline Johnson, was relentless in making sure that her son would have the justice that she believes that he deserves. The question is, where is all the evidence? Are all the above listed entities on a conspiracy theory, are all of the above listed entities in on a conspiracy to protect one FBI agent's sons? For what purpose? Why would this family be important enough to risk their careers for? Who were these people? And we'll get into that, and we'll know. If you're familiar with the case, you already know the suspects. But if not, I really want to get the story rolling and go in order. So build a little suspense here for you guys, okay? We're going to deep dive into everything that I could find about this case. And if you decide, it was an accident or it was murder, that is all going to be on knowing everything that there is to know that I brought to you. Obviously, I'm not a robot. I can't just type in some numbers and get all the data in my head, but I have spent 2 weeks researching this. So hopefully we have all we need for you guys to make an educated decision. Let's start at the beginning. Kendrick Lamar Johnson was born on October 10th of 1995 to his parents, Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson. They lived in Valdosta, Georgia, a town in the far deep south near the Florida-Georgia line, about 60 miles northeast of Tallahassee, Florida. Valdosta is famous for its colorful azaleas and has been called the heart of South Georgia. From the outside looking in, it looks to be a very intimate and close-knit town full of festivals, jubilees, and lots of historical places on the National Register. But upon some deeper digging, it isn't all what their website boasts it to be. In fact, Valdosta has one of the highest crime rates in America. One's chance of being a victim of either violent or property crime in that town is 1 in 27. Another thing that I learned while researching this case was the real history of the town. A dark history, a history of slavery and lynchings so vile that my mind could hardly comprehend what I was learning. I have known about these things, obviously. Of course, but not to the extent that I learned in the making of this video. And while this video is about Kendrick Johnson and his death, which occurred in 2013, there is a reason that I'm going to go into the history of Valdosta first. I believe that it sets a precedence to the story of why the family feels the way that they do about the treatment of their son's case. Valdosta still is not what much of America has become. It's still very much stuck in a time warp where racism still exists. Valdosta, Georgia is still a town where whites still refuse to be waited on by black waitresses, where whites still refuse to shop in black-owned stores. And I was shocked to find out some of the things that are still going on in Valdosta, Georgia to this very day. They are very much stuck, like back in the 50s and 60s on a lot of this stuff. Valdosta's population is mostly black, yet it is run by whites. Though in 1996, Valdosta became the first city to dedicate a memorial to mark the sacrifices of its unnamed slaves. Of the nearly 4 million slaves in America between 1800 and 1860, 2,400 lived in Lowndes County. While this is a very nice gesture, it doesn't seem to be that great when I tell you what else the white people of Valdosta did to you if you happen to be a person of color. Back in the early days, it was not uncommon to walk past a lynching, or 2, or 3, or 4. They would lynch people for anything they could. Not all people, of course. Black people. Walking in the street, wearing a hood or something covering the face, selling cigarettes, whatever. Whites could get away with this, of course, with just a talking to. But blacks, on the other hand, would be hung for all to see. And when I say all to see, too, I mean it. The white families would make a whole day of it. Kids and pets as well. They'd be, pack up your lunch, kids. We're going to go watch some lynchings today. It was like an entertainment for these people back then. And what a great old time, everybody. We're going to spend our Saturday watching someone's life be taken as if they're not human beings. And that's basically what it was. If you were living in Valdosta and you weren't white, then you weren't a human being. And, to this day, some people feel that way there. And it's just disgusting. I mean, the things that I learned, I'm honestly very glad that I learned it, because while I do know racism exists and always, unfortunately, probably will, if in one aspect or another, the extent of it is just horrifying in that area. They're very, deep south is very still stuck in a time warp. So the most disgusting and horrifying lynching that was done in Valdosta was the lynching of Mary Turner, a woman. May 16th, 1918, a plantation worker was murdered, which prompted a manhunt resulting in a series of lynchings. At least 13 black people were killed in a 2-week period. Among those killed were Hayes and Mary Turner. Hayes was killed on May 18th and married the next day at Folsom Bridge. But the people of Valdosta know it even still to this day as the Hanging Bridge. Mary Turner was pregnant. Yes, Mary was 8 months pregnant when her life was taken. So they didn't just take her life, they took the baby's life too. When Mary Turner's husband was taken from her in such a horrifying manner, she went around talking about it. She talked to anyone who would listen and, talked about how unfair it was that he didn't commit this crime. And, if you're waiting for me to tell you something else that she did wrong that caused her to be taken as well, that's it. There isn't anything else. That's all she did. She spoke. She used her words. She voiced that it was unfair and unjust. And for that, she would suffer an even worse fate than her husband, Hayes, had. The townspeople got a hold of Mary and they strung her up by her feet. They doused her with gasoline and oil. Her baby was cut out of her as she hung upside down. And when it fell to the ground, they stomped on it. She's still alive at this point, too. And after that, they set her on fire and they shot her repeatedly. The NAACP referred to Mary Turner's murder in its anti-lynching campaigns in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. And if you don't know, NAACP stands for National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. They're an interracial American organization created to work for the obligation of segregation and discrimination in housing, employment, education, voting, and transportation, to oppose racism and to ensure African Americans their constitutional rights. Now, I wanted to let you know this in advance because a lot of this information will be talked about repeatedly during this case. So, Kendrick was 17 years old and a sophomore at Loundes County High School in the year 2013. He was heavily into sports and was on the track team, basketball team, and football team. So he was a sports guy. Football was his main passion, though, and he dreamed of going pro one day. A source close to Kendrick said he was a safety who hit like a linebacker. And if you know football at all, that is a huge compliment. Kendrick went by the nickname KJ, so that's mainly how I'm going to be referring to him throughout this video. KJ was described as sweet, quiet, and unlikely to cause trouble. He was not the type to go around starting fights, though it was said that when provoked, he would finish it. He was definitely not the type to be messed with. He was very nice and kind, but if you wanted to mess with him and pick on him and bully him, he was not going to have it, and he would fight back. And I don't find there to be anything wrong with that. In fact, I teach my children to be that way. You don't start it, but you do not allow someone to put hands on you and pick on you and bully you. I could go into a whole thing about that, but I won't. Okay. In addition to sports, however, KJ was also into academics. He liked math and he liked science, and he was looking forward to attending college. He came from a large, loving family, as you will see throughout this video. He had so much support, and, not that this should have happened to anybody, but that it happened to him, that he has the family that he has to fight this fight for him, is just amazing, because the mother, father, they never gave up. They still haven't given up. And, they just push for anyone to look at this case and to find what happened here. January 10th, 2013, the day everything took place. KJ's father, Kendrick Johnson, was out of town for work. He was a trucker, and he had been up in New York and was now in Pennsylvania making his way back home. He had spoken to KJ the previous day. KJ had called him in the morning, excited about, asking about this new truck that his dad was going to be getting. He's a trucker. He was going to be getting a nice, new, fancier truck. And they talked about it for a little bit. They got off the phone, planning on seeing each other when his father returned home from work in a day or so. And so they did have that last conversation, and it was said that KJ and his father were very close. KJ adored his father, and they did everything together. So the afternoon of January 10th rolls around, and Jacqueline Johnson, KJ's mother, notices that he didn't get off the bus. So she runs up, and being a Loundes County school bus driver herself, she asked the bus driver, "Hey, where's KJ at?" And she was told that he didn't get on the bus. Now, she knew that he had been planning to attend a basketball game at the school later that evening, and he was supposed to call for a ride home when that was done. So, she figures he found something to do. He's hanging around with his friends and whatever, and that's fine. It's not his curfew yet. Plus, he's going to that game later. He'll call me when he needs a ride. But 9:30 rolls around, and there's still no word from KJ. So Jackie asked KJ's sister, Kenyatta, if she had heard from him, and she said no. So Jackie gets in the car, and she drives to the school. When she gets there, she's looking around. She can't find KJ anywhere. So I guess it's a mess of people. So she goes back home thinking, I can't see him here. I'm not going to find him here. There's too many people here. She goes back home thinking he's going to show up. He knows his curfew. He's going to be here any minute. And, at the time he had a curfew, she's probably thinking, and he's going to be in some trouble because I've been worried about his little butt all afternoon and all evening. And now I've done drove to the school and he's not there and I can't find him. He better get his butt home. So KJ had a curfew of 10. And he knew better than to be out and miss his curfew. So when 11:30 rolled around and he still wasn't home, Jackie started to get worried. She called 911 and she reported KJ missing. Initially, the police told her that KJ was probably out with some fast-tailed girl. But Jackie was like, no, not my son. He knows better than to be out past curfew, and in either case, he would have contacted someone. He's just not the type to just not come home or not call or talk to someone. Like I said, they have a very big, close family, so someone would have heard from him. So at that point, a missing persons report was made. Jackie, being alone at home, her daughter was there, but her daughter was sleeping, and, she's up just worried to death about her son. And Kenneth is traveling still on his way home, so she's alone, and she's alone with her thoughts. So she calls her mother, and her mother drives over to come and be with her, and they are up more than half the night just worrying about KJ, waiting, hoping, maybe that he comes through the door. Sorry, Mom, But that didn't happen. At about 4 a.m., Jackie receives a phone call from the police that they had received her son's missing persons report, and they were actively beginning the search for her son. 8 a.m., Officer Michael Adams arrived at Loundes High School and told them that he was there to follow up on a missing persons report. He asked the school secretary to check with Bobby Wilson, who was KJ's first period teacher, to see if KJ was in class this morning. The answer was no. 8:30 a.m., Jackie and her daughter Kenyatta, KJ's sister, arrive at the school, and Jackie asked the main office if they had located her son yet. Now, this was reported differently, and as we are used to on my channel, especially lately, the police report said that Jackie was led to the principal's office, but media said that it was the counselor's office, so we're not sure exactly which office she was sent to wait, but this is the first discrepancy of many to come. Trust me on that. This one is minor. But as you will see that when it comes to the school, police, family, and media, there are lots of telephone scenarios going on. I talked about that in my other thing. I just have this thing. I call it the telephone. It's like nobody can get it right. Which answer is correct? It's like it gets twisted every time it comes out of somebody else's mouth. So lots of anonymous sources as well in this case made it extremely difficult to find the truth. So Jacqueline Johnson is in the office waiting, either the principal's or counselor's office. Officer Michael Adams is now printing out photos of KJ. The secretary comes in and lets Adams know that the mother is here at the school in the office. So he goes to talk to her and asks her some information about KJ. He asked, does he have a girlfriend? The answer was no. He asked who his best friend was, and so she told him. And he asked if the student of that name given was at the school today, and he was told no. And so he right away calls up an officer, sends them to the home of KJ's best friend, thinking, maybe, hopefully, they're together and they're, ditching, and maybe they're up to something, but, I'm sure he's fine. Maybe they're together. If the best friend's not here and KJ's not here, maybe they're up to something. But he soon finds out that his friend was not ditching, that he had actually been suspended. So he wasn't in school because he wasn't allowed to be in school. And not only that, he had not heard from KJ or seen him. So far the investigation seems to be going the way you would expect it to, right? It seems that it's being taken very seriously and that they're following a standard protocol. Lowndes County High School has 2 gyms, the new gym and the old gym. How creative, right? The old gym was located north of the cafeteria and was still used for a bunch of different things, practices, classes. They would regularly hold, all sorts of practices and classes there. There were bleachers in that gym along the north and south sides of the gym. Now, the school's winter break had just ended, and January 10th was the second day back for the students and faculty. In the old gym, there were several gym mats rolled up where they were usually stored. But during break, additional mats had been brought into the old gym, and all of them had been rolled up and placed upright against the wall in the southwest corner of the gym. There was about 21 in all, and they were all standing up. I think they were usually all over the place, but, due to it was just break, they probably cleaned up a bit, instead of them all lying all over the floor everywhere, they rolled them up nicely and put them up neatly against the wall. So this was only day 2 from the kids coming back into school at this point. So that day, a teacher named Philip Piplow was having class in the old gym, and he'd passed out some surveys for his students to take at some point during the class. 2 girls were the first to finish their surveys, and after handing them in to Mr. Piplow, they went off by the mats and they climbed up on them and they were lying down. Now, in standing up, these mats were about 6 feet tall and about 3 feet wide. So, 21 of them were all kind of lined up together. So they were probably easy to just climb all over. And it was typical for students to just kind of climb all over these mats. You know how high school kids are antsy. If they can go and wander off, yet still be considered in class, they're going to do it. So, and had they not done this, oh my goodness, I don't know how much longer it would have been before his body was found. Because one of the girls, while she's up there, notices something, and she yells to her friend. She sees feet. And at first she thinks that someone's just in there trying to scare her, but then she realizes that the feet aren't moving. And she starts freaking out, and they both start yelling. Other students are starting to come over. They're like, oh my gosh, there's these feet in here. Then they start screaming because they realize something's wrong. And Mr. Piplow comes over, and sure enough, they see that someone is in this. So Mr. Piplow comes over. What is going on, you guys? The girl says that she saw, just remember this part because this is something that I noticed. She tells Mr. Piplow that she just saw feet with socks in the mat. So that's all she said. She said feet with socks. She didn't say anything else. That was her direct quote. Now keep that in mind because I'm going to keep going here and I'm going to see where this might be an inconsistency or it could have just been a misspeak. So the official report says Mr. Piplow came over and was unable to free the person from the mat. He and another student began pulling down the other mats to better get to the one that the student was stuck inside of. They pulled the mat with KJ in it down as well. They said that they didn't touch the body, but that they could tell he was dead because of the smell and the lack of movement. It was reported that once the mat was pulled down, that the body came out a little bit, and there was quite a bit of blood and vomit as well. Police were immediately called, and I believe it was by a student, only because I heard the 911 call, and it sounds like a younger male voice on the phone. So I'm thinking Mr. Piplow is like flipping his shit, trying to calm students down, trying to kind of assess the situation here. And so he's like, call 911. Little do they know, they have a cop there already who is looking for this kid. So now here's the second discrepancy. Mr. Piplow contradicts himself because he says that he tried but couldn't get the body out. But then he also says that he didn't touch the body. So, and now I don't believe that this is a sinister thing, What I think happened is when he realized he couldn't, okay, I would believe that he did touch the body, all right, trying to get him out. So I think that would have been anyone's immediate response to someone stuck inside of something to try to pull them out. I mean, he's a teacher. He is responsible for students. He sees someone is stuck in this mat, and his instinct would probably be to try to pull that student out. So I believe that he touched the body, but when he realized he couldn't get him out, he ordered someone to help him move these mats out of the way. And, so that he could get to the one that KJ was in and be able to tip it over and get him out that way. But when they did tip it over and went to that side and they noticed what they, the smell and the blood and the vomit and, they realized that he was no longer alive. I don't think they touched him from that point on. So, and I mean, what are you supposed to do? I mean, most people's instinct, when they see this is to help, but then once you realize, okay, he's beyond help, now I'm not gonna touch him anymore. So I do believe he did, but I don't believe it was for any type of sinister reason. And I don't believe what he did would have screwed anything up, but I did want to put that in there. So at 10:30 a.m., Adams was notified that a body was found in the old gym, and within 3 minutes, he and another officer, Carrie Quinn, were at the old gym. Students were running in and out of the gym, talking about there being a dead body when they came in there. The police report said, upon approach of the southwest corner of the gym, I detected the mild odor of a corpse. I saw a blue gym mat rolled up on the floor, as well as 2 feet with socks and denim jeans. The one with KJ was found in was against a wall with other mats on the floor in front of it and around it. Okay. Let me keep going, and then we're going to stop for a second. Walking around to the other end of the mat, I observed this. In the center of the mat, I observed a black male torso and a head, wearing white exposed down to his ribcage. Both arms partially obstructed the face and were moderately stiff. The facial area was severely disfigured and swollen. The only identifying feature that I observed were the long dreadlocks, Michael Adams said. So here we have a girl who says that she sees feet with socks. We have in the initial police report him saying that on the one side looking into the mat, he noticed 2 feet with socks and denim jeans. Okay. And, at the front, he says, the torso and the head and whatever. We don't hear anything about shoes, is what I'm trying to say, right? Nobody has heard, the girl didn't say anything about shoes, and the police report at this point has said nothing about shoes, right? Okay, I want to throw that out there. Make a note of that. If you guys are trying to help me out with cases, you like to tell me all the things that I miss, write this one down. I want to see what you guys have to think about this. So, we're all doing this together, right? You guys are helping me. Okay, so now I'm not posting any of the photos of his face on here, so don't worry about that. If what that they're bad. They are bad. They are very, very bad. They are one of the reasons why I didn't really want to do this case, because it was hard to find out information without his face in this manner popping up. So it was one of the reasons I kind of steered away from it. But I have seen a lot now about this, and I have seen a lot in the past. But this, for some reason, these photos of Kendrick Johnson are so horrifying to look at. They're just bad. So they are out there. I'm not going to be putting the face. I will be putting pretty much everything else. But I just can't. I can't do that. I don't even know. I would probably be flagged. Who knows? They are out there, though. The family is okay with them being out there. They actually wore shirts with this photo on them to campaign for him, to kind of show why they believe that this was not an accident. So they're out there. You don't even have to Google much. Just basically put his name and put photo, and you're gonna see them. So but I just can't do that. I don't even think I'd be allowed to. So now, where am I? And keep in mind, KJ was upside down and decomposing for 24 hours prior to being found. So all the blood had rushed to his head and had pooled there. And if you know anything about lividity, that also set in. So it's not a pretty sight. They are haunting images. They really, really are. They stick in your mind for quite some time. So the gym is immediately taped off now at this point, and the school is locked down until they can secure it, till law enforcement can, assess the situation and make sure that there is no threat to the school, or that there's nobody running around the school that could have done this. So meanwhile, Jackie is still sitting in the office, totally unaware of what is going on. But she is starting to get text messages from people wondering what is going on at the high school. She's getting messages saying, there's ambulances out there, there's fire trucks out there, there's cops everywhere. What the heck is going on at the school? And at the same time that this is going on, the office phone rings, and the secretary picks up the phone, and Jackie can hear the person on the other end of the phone say, "We found a body in the gym." So immediately she says she knew that it was Kendrick. And, so the school's on lockdown already at this point, and they're treating it as a crime scene. They're processing the scene. The girls that found KJ make the statement that his legs and feet were hanging out of the mat, and the smell was horrible. Now, his legs and feet hanging out of the mat, they weren't hanging out of the... So there's inconsistencies in the girl's statement versus what we're going to see in these crime scene photos. So Jackie has now heard the news via the other end of the phone that a body has been found in the old gym, and she becomes hysterical, as any mother would. She is screaming and she is crying, and somebody actually has the audacity to come up to her and say, "Why are you crying? Why are you making such a fuss? Stop screaming. You don't even know if it's him." She says, "Is any other student been reported missing today?" I mean, seriously. I mean, how can you argue with that? She's like, did anyone else call and say that their kid's missing? That maybe it could be somebody else's kid? I mean, how many missing kids you got here at the school today, guy? So she is so distraught, they put her in a wheelchair. She is just not doing well. When her sister comes, she actually does put a phone call into her sister, who was driving at the time and had to pull over in order to just absorb that information. And when her sister shows up, she said when she saw Jackie, she looked drugged. She was just so out of it, like it had just sucked her whole life out of her to find this out. So at 11:08, James Thornton is on the scene. Now, he's the CSI for the Loundes County Sheriff Office. The GBI as well as the FBI are also called in. James does a walkthrough of the gym, and he is looking for signs of any forced entry, which he does not find. There is a window open, but it looked to be purposely opened from the inside, probably to ventilate the gym. James Thornton took pictures of the scene as well as video, and a 3D image of the scene was also eventually created in a virtual layout to kind of show where, the position of things. So up until this point, they seem to have been treating this as a crime scene, and they seem to have done their job very thoroughly. Or, if you want to believe the other side of things, was this the time that they were creating this cover-up, which would be one of the biggest cover-ups that has ever occurred, in just modern society? The Johnson family believes the second theory. They believe that during this time when the school and police were running around trying to clean up evidence of a crime and to figure out how to cover all of these things up. Now, in order for this to be possible, there are many entities that would have to be in on it. Up until this early stage, the entities would have to include the well-respected GBI, the FBI, the medical examiner, the school, Valdosta PD, Loundes County Sheriff's Department, and the Regional Crime Lab. So that's a lot of entities that would have to be in on this conspiracy. And for what reason? What reason would it be? And, we will eventually get into the allegations that make this a little bit more believable that maybe they are covering up for someone. So the general belief of the Johnson family is that KJ was murdered by 2 students. In particular, 2 white students, and that their FBI father covered this up for them. And due to the history in Valdosta, Georgia that we talked about at the beginning of this video, a foundational mistrust went into this from the family's perspective. A mistrust that has gone on for many, many years. And that's what I believe. I believe they didn't trust the law enforcement from the start. And it only went downhill from there when inconsistencies started coming up and discrepancies started happening. Their mistrust just grew, and it has never gone away. And I think every time that they got a little bit farther and the case got closed again, they got even more mistrusting of this and even more convinced that this is a conspiracy. So where is this coming from? Who are these 2 boys? And why would anybody think that they had anything to do with this? Well, we're going to get into that later. But I can tell you one thing. My opening to this video is part of that reason. So in the eyes of Kendrick Johnson's family, this was a racial injustice. From the Johnson family perspective, I think so too. When you look at it from their perspective and from what they have to say, it very much seems that it was not only a racial injustice, but a cover-up. But that is only one side to this tragic story. So let's keep going. James Thornton says that they wore gloves and they were sure to be as careful as usual. There was no cross-contamination after he got there. It was, however, a forensic nightmare. It was a school gym, and this school had over 3,000 students and faculty. And being that KJ had been there for over 24 hours, this made it even more of a nightmare for investigators. People had been in and out of that gym all day the day before and all morning as well. So during the investigation, that was something that they found. It was very hard to keep the crime scene from having been contaminated. But James Thornton assured everyone that the second that this was ruled, a death scene, that everything was handled appropriately and nothing had been contaminated after that. So during the investigation, there were some shoes that came into play. 2.5 pairs of shoes, to be exact. And have you heard anything about shoes up until this point, other than when I said, remember certain things? No, you haven't. So you're going to hear all about them now. There was a black and white pair of Adidas shoes that were found separate from each other. And these were KJ's gym shoes that he was said to have shared with another student. These were also the shoes that investigators used to help identify the body as KJ's. Yeah, you heard right. Investigators showed these shoes to Kendrick Johnson, Kendrick's sister, and asked if they looked familiar to her, and she identified them as being KJ's shoes, and this was how he was identified, because facially he could not be identified. He was that badly, his face was that unrecognizable. So one of these shoes was found inside the gym mat by KJ's head after the mat had been put on its side and he had kind of slipped out a little bit. The shoe was there. Supposedly, allegedly. There was, and the other one was found outside of the mat on the other end. So there was another pair of shoes as well, a white, gray, and orange pair of Nikes. And these were found by KJ's feet inside of the mat. They were kind of tucked next to his calves, as you can see here. Now, the girl who found him never said anything about these shoes, but they were clearly in this crime scene photo. It's possible that she saw the feet and that was enough to spook her and she didn't even notice the shoes, but I did make note of this because she wasn't the only one to not say that she saw these shoes in here. These shoes were also identified by KJ's sister as his. She said those were the shoes that he had been wearing that day. So if you're confused, let me clarify. So KJ was wearing these Nikes as his, the white Nikes as his school shoes, his street shoes, his regular shoes. And for gym, he would change his shoes, as is common. I mean, my kids, the same thing. Every year we got to buy 2 pairs of gym shoes, one for gym and, one for their street gym shoes. So only gym shoes in the gym, There was a third shoe, however, that was also found in the gym that day, and it was a black Nike shoe with orange laces. It was a size 9.5, which is the same size as Kendrick's Adidas shoes that had been found and the white Nikes that had been found. Size 9.5, found near the bleachers near the north wall in the old gym. Now, I don't know if they got this shoe confused with the white shoes because you'll see in a minute. Now, this shoe, this single black shoe with the orange laces, at first glance looked to have blood on them. And so a presumptive test was done on them by the GBI, and that test came back negative. And it's odd because all these shoes are size 9.5s, right? And it's just weird, right? But basically, all 5 shoes found at the scene were size 9.5. To this day, we have never found out who the owner of that random black shoe belonged to. Now, here's the third discrepancy. In Thornton's police report, it stated that the white, gray, and orange Nikes were found near the bleachers on the north side, but those are the shoes that are in this photo here from the crime scene, and they're clearly not all the way on the other end of the gym. They're right next to KJ in the mat. And like I said, they said that this black shoe with orange laces was found on the north end. So are they confusing the two? Was this like a complete misspell or misspeak? Miswrite? I don't know, but it was clearly a mistake. But was it a mistake on purpose? We don't know. I've seen crime scene photos of these shoes there and then them not there. So I don't know. This has always been very suspicious to me. Like as if they were planted there during the investigation by investigators. This is alleged. I don't know, obviously, but I'm not the only one who thinks this. It's just odd. But why would they be? Like, why would it matter? Were they like, oh crap, like his shoes are over there, this doesn't make sense, we need to put him in there with him? And why would he not be wearing any shoes at this point? Oh my gosh, you guys, it gets weirder, okay? So let's recap on the shoes just so that we're all on the same page with the shoes, because they will come into play again. We will talk about them again. So there's this black and white Adidas by his head, which appeared to have been inside the mat with him. There's the match to that shoe on the outside that appeared to have not been in the mat with him. There are 2 pairs of white Nike shoes in the mat with him, but yet nobody saw them in there when they reported seeing him. And then there was this random black shoe that was found on the north side of the gym. So my guess would be that this random shoe is not connected to this case at all. I mean, it's a gym, and you're going to hear a bit about certain practices that the students had regarding gym shoes and the mats in the gym. So I kind of am erring along the lines of that random shoe is exactly what it is, random, but it could have been used to do other things too. But, you know, we're going to get into that way later on. We're still very much in the beginning of this case. So in addition to the shoes, investigators also found a yellow folder, a science textbook, and a medium-sized Hollister pullover hoodie. This folder was found on one end of a different mat. The science book was between some rolled up mats, and the hoodie was found on the concrete floor near the mats. The yellow folder was proven to be KJ's, and as you can see, he's carrying it in the surveillance photos and videos. He also carried it into the gym in the last seen footage of him alive. This hoodie appeared to have blood on the sleeves, some people had said, but the hoodie was never taken in as evidence, so it was never swabbed, and like the shoe, to this day, no one knows whose hoodie that was. Now that too could have been a random hoodie. Again, it's a gym, you know, and when you hear people like to throw things into these mats, so it could have been that it was just there. But when they reopened the case and other people started looking into it, they came across the picture of this hoodie, and one of the investigators noticed on the sleeve what may have been blood, and was like, was this ever swabbed? Like, do we have this hoodie in evidence? Like, I would like to know if that's blood, and if so, did it match KJ's? But we will never know this, because the answer is no, we have no swabs, and no, we have no hoodie. So there were also some bloody tissues found in the girls' bathroom near the old gym, and these were all taken into evidence and secured, as well as the swabbed evidence. There was blood splatter on the walls on one end of the gym, and a presumptive test was positive for blood, but the blood did not belong to KJ. And they said that they would have to test the entire school for DNA, which a lot of parents probably would say no to, because once your DNA is done, it's in files. You know, that is kind of a big invasion of not even kind of, this is a huge invasion of privacy, especially for a minor. So they wouldn't even be able to get consent for this, was their reasoning behind it. Although they still do have the swabs in evidence today. It would be nice if they could maybe match them to the suspects, but that has not been done, at least not that I'm aware of at this point. So the bloody tissues were later revealed to be from a female student that was at color guard practice the night before, and she got hit in the face with another student's color guard pole and caused her to have a bloody nose, and this was confirmed by DNA testing. So at this point, the initial findings were that KJ went into the mat on his own willingly. He got stuck and asphyxiated, and they called it gravitational asphyxia, to be exact. Now, why would he have willingly crawled into a gym mat, though? I know, you're all wondering this. So here's the narrative on that story. Many students were interviewed, as well as friends of KJ's, and many of them had the same story. There was a locker fee at the high school, and rather than pay that locker fee, some students would hide their gym shoes in these mats after gym class and then retrieve them again before gym the next day, and so on and so forth. So basically, they would store their gym shoes instead of paying for a locker. They would store them for free in these gym mats. I mean, really, locker fees? Come on, school. What does the taxpayer money pay for these days? You can't even pay for, a locker, or at least have the kids have a lock, and have their own lock that they bring. Isn't that usually how it works? So, if you remember, I also said that KJ was said to have shared these shoes with another student. So they were worn for gym, and then they were placed back in the same mat for the next use. And the student that shares the shoes said, "Me and KJ had third block gym together in Coach Davis's class. I would always wait for Coach Davis to call roll, and then I would go get the shoes. I would tilt the mat over to get the shoes from the bottom. I never got into the mat." So while it was very common for students to store their gym class shoes in the mats, it was not common for them to crawl down into the mats to get the shoes. They would simply go over, tip the mat over on its side and get the shoes from the bottom of the mat. So crawling down in them was not something that people did. So because of that, the theory here is that because the mats were all standing up now, he didn't know which mat they were in. He came back from break and all the mats are standing up, and he's like, which one now I don't know where they are. And not only that, there's a bunch of mats in front of the mats, so I don't even know how I'm going to get them out now. So he climbs up on the bleachers to the top of the mats, and he walks along the mats looking for the one that has his shoes in it. The mat that contained his shoes was up against the wall, and there were also mats standing in front of it. So he wouldn't have been able to tip it over and get his shoes out like he normally would have done. So he makes the decision to squeeze down in there head first and get the shoes. He sets his folder and book down on the top of the mat next to the one he's about to go into and makes his descent down. Once he is down there, he realizes he's stuck and he cannot get back out. Now, does this make sense to any of you? I mean, it kind of made sense to me. That is until I heard the measurements of the mat and then the measurements of KJ. So the mats rolled up were, like I said earlier, approximately 6 feet tall. And the opening in the middle of the mat was about 14 inches in diameter. Now, KJ was approximately 5'10", 160 pounds, and his shoulders were 19 inches wide. So how would he have even thought that he would have been able to fit down in there? I mean, it's possible he was able to maybe make it wider so that he could get down in there. But I mean, I would think just looking at, you're not going to fit. What would make someone think that they could fit down there and still get back out? I mean, the narrative makes sense up until you hear these measurements, and the family has never believed this at all, that he willingly went down in there to do that. It didn't make sense to them. So, surveillance videos. January 10th, 2013, at approximately 8:30 a.m., we have a surveillance video of KJ seen walking into the school wearing a white t-shirt, orange undershirt, denim jeans, and white shoes. Those white, gray, and orange Nike shoes. Approximately 1 p.m., we have footage of KJ seen on surveillance again, wearing the same clothes and entering the old gym. Now, this was supposedly a passing period between 3rd and 4th block, and he appeared to be running. A lot of people had a lot to say about that. Was he running away from someone? This shows that someone was chasing him, things like that. I tend to believe that I think he was late. I think he was running late for class, and it would make sense with a lot of other things. However, it could also be that he was running from someone. So, I'm very on the fence with a lot of this stuff. So, the student that shared his shoes, this is something that I noticed. Take note of this too, because I'm not quite sure about this, but the student that shared his shoes said that they both had gym 3rd block. Now, we know KJ died before 4th block. And they say block, we say period. So 3rd period, 4th period, So this was passing period between 3rd and 4th block. But I thought he had gym 3rd block. So why would he be getting his shoes after gym? Or, he'd be putting them back, not getting them. Right? So why would he need to go into a mat at all? I guess is what I'm getting at. But it was said that his 4th block class was weight training. So I'm confused here. I don't know. Maybe he didn't get them for gym and the other kid was wearing them and he was wearing his shoes. Like, I'm so confused about these shoes. These shoes, they haunt me at night. I'm trying to figure this out. So let me know if you guys notice anything about this, just from me talking about these shoes, because I don't, and this 3rd and 4th period, like, I don't understand why he would be getting his shoes when he should have already had them because he just had gym. Or maybe I'm just dumb right now and have been doing this case for way too long. But I don't know, so let's move on. It was found out during the investigation that KJ was actually not on the high school football team anymore due to his grades and his attendance. So this is also why he could have been running, because he was told that he had to get his attendance up, like to stop being late to classes and to get his grades up, and he would be able to get back on the team. So maybe he was running because he was going to be late. He needed to keep his attendance up. This could also be why he went down into the mat for these shoes, as opposed to going all the way back to the bleachers, getting back down, moving the mats out of the way in order to flip the mat over. He thought he was saving time. I'm gonna just dive in real quick and grab them, but there was another Adidas shoe that was found outside of the mat. So is it possible that he was somehow able to get down there and retrieve one of his shoes and like toss it out, and then when he went back down for the second shoe is when something happened and he either got stuck or his position got to a place where he couldn't get back out again. It's interesting that one of the shoes was out and one of them was not. So it kind of makes the accident part make sense. So we're going to hear a lot. Some will make sense that it's an accident. Some will just not make sense at all and point to foul play. But we're going to hear all of it. So what do you guys think about that? Now, he was found with both arms up over his head, kind of like this. I don't know. So at 4 p.m., the county coroner, Bill Watson, arrives on scene, a whopping 6 hours after the body was found. Sound familiar, anybody? But however, in this case, Georgia law is to call the coroner immediately after a body is found so that the coroner can preserve the body and get an accurate finding as soon as possible. But Bill says he was not called until the investigators were done processing the scene. And he was pretty ticked about this, and he said as much. Okay. He was not called until the investigators were done processing the scene, which is how they felt it should have went. They wanted to preserve the crime scene first. According to them, the medical examiner would have just had to sit and wait for those 6 hours either way while they processed the scene. So that's why they waited to call him to come. And either way, Bill Watson was not happy, and he said as much in his interview, saying, "I was not notified in his death until 15:45 hours, which is 3:45 p.m. The investigative climate was very poor to worse when I arrived on scene. The body had been noticeably moved. The scene had been compromised, and there was no cooperation from law enforcement at the scene." So let's break that down. He wasn't called until 3:45. We know that the body was found around 10:30 a.m. And he said the investigative climate was very poor to worse when I arrived on scene. And I think what he means by that is it was a gym. It was a warm gym. The body had been there for a while, so it was already starting to decompose. So the gym is warm. Then there's a lot of activity going on in the gym, which is making it even warmer. and making him stay there longer, decomposing even more. And I think that's what he means. It was poor to beginning, or, poor at the beginning, and now it's even worse because all of this has been going on while this body has been sitting here. So he was ticked. Like, he was not happy. And as far as the body being noticeably moved, I'm not sure how he means, because, yes, obviously it was because it was found, he was in a the mat was found standing in an upright position, and he was inside of it. Well, of course it was moved. They had to make sure whether or not the person in there could have been alive, right? It could have just happened, So to say that it was moved as if something sinister was going on, all that did was spark outrage in the family, I think this comment that Bill Watson made really was pouring gasoline on an already going fire, because, this just really caused the parents to be like, okay, what the hell? They moved the body? Like, they didn't do this right? They didn't even call the coroner? So CNN was all over this, and the sheriff's department didn't immediately respond. But later on, Sheriff Prime said that even though it is protocol to notify the coroner ASAP, the investigation was still handled correctly. His exact words were, "The coroner was contacted once investigators had worked the surrounding scene and were prepared to make an examination of the deceased. Kendrick Johnson wasn't touched or moved until the coroner arrived, although not contacted by the sheriff's office until investigators were ready to examine the body. The coroner had knowledge that an investigation was taking place for a death at the high school." And I do believe that that's the way it works, to be honest. I don't know that the crime scene, I do know that the crime scene has to be processed before the victim can be moved. And I don't think that the victim was moved, other than the fact that they pulled the mat down. Once they realized that he was not alive, they didn't touch him. So the body wasn't touched, once they realized that it was in fact a body and not a living person. And according to them, the coroner already knew that he was going to be called to come in for this body. According to them, the coroner knew that there was a deceased body at the high school that he was going to come in for. And this is a he said, she said thing. And unfortunately, when that happens, sometimes I just don't know which way to go with it. Regardless of that, all evidence was said to be accurately collected and preserved. When it comes to the body, investigators and medical examiners are both making notes at the same time. So the investigators need the medical examiner to come, and they both do these things together. So Bill Watson made it seem like it was out of the ordinary when really it wasn't, is what it sounds like to me. And it kind of boils down to this, okay? Investigators, they're protective over their crime scene, and the medical examiners are protective over their body. So, not their body, but the deceased. I know you guys know. But the medical examiner is protective of the body, so it's like the ME doesn't want anyone messing with this body. Like, that's mine for me to look, for me to handle, and me to do with. I don't want anyone touching it. I don't want anyone messing with it. I don't want anyone, contaminating it. Whereas the investigators are like, I don't need a medical examiner traipsing all around my crime scene right now. We're just going to he can come when we need him. Right now, we need to preserve this evidence, and I don't need another, pair of feet walking around my crime scene. So with the fact that it was a school and there was 3,000 kids that were in and out of that gym, he didn't want one more person stepping up in there. And I think that was maybe, this is, me trying to give people the benefit of the doubt here. He was just doing his job. And he was protective of his crime scene, and he didn't want the ME there, because what could the ME have done at that point? Nothing. He still had to wait for the investigator to be done so that they could take this report down together and go over the body together, because that is how it is done. So when Bill Watson first saw Kendrick, he was lying on his left side, partially sticking out of the mat from the abdomen up. His head was in a pool of blood. His right arm appeared to be covering his face. His left arm was along the side of his body, with a forearm slightly bent towards his head. So I would say like this, kind of. The fingers on both of his hands were curled and there was a pair of white earbuds attached to a wire hooked around his left hand's middle and index finger. His face was swollen beyond recognition. There was blood coming out of his nose, mouth, and eyes. His eyes were swollen. There were burst blood vessels, and there was also dried blood on his face, arms, and his chest. A black and white Adidas shoe was found in the puddle of blood by his head. The match to that shoe was found outside the mat. So we've already talked about the shoes. It gets even weirder. Surveillance didn't catch any of this, so this is all open for interpretation and speculation, because that's all we are going to know because we have no surveillance of it. But Kendrick Johnson's jeans were unbuttoned and partially unzipped. The front right pocket was pulled out, and the front left pocket, there was an LG cell phone. So what do you guys think of that? The phone is odd because when they say that the phone wasn't actually turned on and it wasn't his, but it's possible. Well, let's just backtrack for a second. So surveillance doesn't catch any of this. We don't know. If he was late, if he was running late, he could have unbuttoned his pants, or maybe he was putting them back on and he was like, I'm late, you know? And like running, I don't know. It's just, it does kind of fit the late theory. You know, if it were an accident, he's running late. He's already, you know, starting to get undressed so that he's ready. Now, this LG cell phone was said to not have service, like I said, and it actually didn't belong to him. It was his cousin's phone, but it was said that he was probably using it as a, like, kind of an iPod, which would explain that, you know, he's going to weight class, right? So he's got the earbuds wrapped around his hand. He's got the phone to listen to the music once he gets in there, maybe. I don't know. But the phone didn't have service, and it was last used December 27th of 2012. So, I don't know. Could he have been reaching for that phone, possibly, to call 911? I don't know. Just because the phone doesn't have service does not mean 911 doesn't work. Trust me, I know. I gave my little one my old phone as an iPod, and she called 911, and imagine my surprise when I have 3 officers knocking on my door asking me if I'm okay and where's my daughter. She's like 4 at the time. Oh my gosh, it was so embarrassing and scary. Anyway, so I mentioned at the beginning of this video that there were 3 autopsies performed on Kendrick Johnson. So of course, I'm going to go over the original autopsy report. The first autopsy findings were that he had 1/8 by 1/8 superficial abrasion on his right wrist, 4th finger of his left hand. There were 2 superficial abrasions, also measuring 1/8 by 1/8 as well. It's interesting to me that they are the exact same length. You know? Like the same thing caused it, but in several different places. Now, this report claims that there were no other injuries besides what happened to him due to being upside down and deceased for over 24 hours, meaning the decomp, meaning the fact that he was facially unrecognizable had nothing to do with an injury. It was caused by being upside down for that amount of time and, you know, all the blood rushing to the head. This autopsy was performed on January 14th of 2013 by Dr. Kraft at the GBI lab in Macon, Georgia. And he said, I'm not sure at this point what he died from, but I can tell you what he did not die from. He had not been beaten, he had not been stabbed, he had not been shot, he had not been sexually assaulted, or anything such as that. Dr. Kraft ruled KJ's cause of death as positional asphyxia. So, hanging upside down causes all of your blood to rush to your head, as everybody knows. And eventually, it can build up such pressure that it starts coming out of the nose, the mouth, the eyes. It can come out the ears. In this case, it didn't, but it can. So that is why he's explaining that he had blood coming out of his nose and his mouth. It wasn't from being hit or anything like that. It was from being in that position, and all that pressure of blood eventually has to go somewhere. I mean, your entire blood volume is now in your head for 24 hours. So, they were, the shoe. Yep, the shoe again. Okay, so the black and white Adidas shoe that was found on top of the pool of blood by KJ's head, CNN reported that there was no blood on that shoe. And they were corrected by investigators who said that there was a little bit of blood on the laces and on one line in the back of the shoe. Now, what does this matter? The shoe was supposedly found in a pool of blood by KJ's head. How did it not have blood on it? And that's why the investigators were like, yes, it did have blood on it right here, here, and here. And as you can see in this picture, really, that's not a lot of blood for the shoe having been found in a pool of blood. So this doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me at all. And, this is something that a lot of people went crazy about, insisting that both of these shoes were planted, and eventually all of the shoes have been alleged to be planted. So now here's the second autopsy report. After this, we're going to stop and I'm going to go into part 2 later. So later on in this case, Kendrick Johnson is exhumed, and we will talk more about this second autopsy later on. But this autopsy has different results. So the results of the second autopsy listed the cause of death for Kendrick Johnson as blunt force trauma to the neck. How did the first autopsy miss that, if that were the case? Dr. Kraft, the man who originally did the first autopsy, denied ever seeing evidence of this. He said, no, I did not see any evidence of blunt force trauma to the neck. What are you talking about? And this is also the least of what was found in Kendrick Johnson's second autopsy. In fact, the results of the second autopsy, or even just the next stage we're going to get to in this autopsy, will shock you. But that is for part 2. So, yes, I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger so that you tune back in. But this is going to end part 1. So I left you guys a lot to go over and to think about. What do you think so far? Let me know in the comment section. There's so much more to come. Parts 2, 3, and possibly 4. So make sure that you subscribe, make sure you hit that notification bell so that you get notified of the next video that comes out. So other than that, you guys have a great rest of your week. I should be getting out part 2. I do have sick children here, so I am trying to get these out, but it's my little one now, and so I gotta really, I'm trying to take care of her, and whenever it's like a congestion chest thing, I get scared. So I'm definitely working to get these out to you in a timely fashion. However, with all the sicknesses going on with my kids, and I don't know if I'm coming down with it too, it is putting a lag on things, so I do apologize for that. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please stay tuned in, because I really want you guys to hear the rest of this story. It is going to get weirder and more crazy, and I really want you guys to take a look at this with me and let me know what you guys think about everything. Maybe we can crack something in this case. You never know. Every time I put out a video and put this out to new eyes and new people, you never know what we may find, right? So thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a great day.
Oh, you don't know me. I am fading, unfelt.